Heads up, this was the first video I recorded for this batch. I was pretty happy with it until I recorded the other ones and realized that in this one I'm talking too slowly. But it was too late, I edited it already, so re-recording would mean starting from scratch, but my launch was already delayed. So I figured I'd just apologize and advise you to speed it up on YouTube. Whenever I create my docs, be it for myself or my clients, there is one particular way how I organize them. I believe it's the best practice and you should do it too whenever you're creating something more complicated than a doc with 2 tables. In this video, let me show you how, but most importantly, why. Let's go. I'm scanning you telepathically to see how you were building your first doc. First, you created a table of tasks, then you created a view of my tasks, then a view of completed tasks, a view of priority tasks, maybe a Kanban for dragging them around, some charts, and when you liked what you got and you started using it for more projects, you added a projects table somewhere in there, and perhaps a few more pages. And if you were on a more pro of a beginner side, you actually created a do not touch page and you put all your tables there. Collapsed, of course. Now this is perfectly fine. This way of building docs inspires getting comfortable with Coda without asking yourself too much, am I doing this right? However, inevitably you get addicted to Coda and you want to move all your workflows onto it. So you keep building out your doc. You add pages, you add tables, more pages, more tables. You're just adding them whenever you need them, wherever you are at the moment. And since you're not sticking to any system, everything just ends up scattered everywhere, resulting in a doc that looks like Edith Finch's house. That's a great game with a great story, by the way. Eventually, you get lost in your own doc. And whenever you want to adjust something, it gets increasingly harder to find it. Congratulations, your doc is now an app, but a messy one. You head out to rebuild it, but if you still don't have any system, eventually it will end up just the same. So what shall we do? Well, we've said it ourselves, our doc is now like an app. So it might be a good idea to take inspiration from real app development. Developers write thousands, millions lines of code, and obviously they cannot keep it all in their heads. Despite that, they keep adding features. And they also work in teams and are able to pick up after each other's work. So how do they do that? The answer is by picking and obediently sticking to the rules and guidelines that are suitable for the platform they are developing with. Because working by the same rules and standards doesn't only get everyone on the same page, but it also helps you individually pick up where you left without having to remember how you did it. You just know that you did it according to a system and everything is predictable and you know where to exactly find each piece. Being an experienced and awarded developer myself, I took those principles, adjusted them to Coda, and I'm applying them in literally every doc that I'm building. And this video is gonna be the first in the series about all these best practices. Yes, this so far was the lengthy intro into the whole best practices series. I had to explain why it was important. And now the actual video starts. Alright, my principles. Number 1. I always create a separate part of the doc for all the base tables. Base tables as in all the new local and sync tables. Not just a page, but a whole, let's call it realm, where regular users shall never enter. This is the realm for the engineer, the doc builder, the people maintaining this doc, not using it. Whenever I create a new doc, this is the first page that I add. The rest of the doc, which is meant for using it and interacting with the data, is all built with views. And even if I'm in the middle of something, working in some user-facing page, if I feel that I need to add a table, I always go into the database part of the doc, and that's where I add it. No exceptions. Having your doc organized like that, keeping base tables in the base table realm, and only using the views in the user-facing realm, not only helps eliminate the confusion that there is between the base tables and views, I will talk more about it in an upcoming video, but also saves you a lot of time. You need to adjust some columns in your chart? Great, you don't need to change it into table, adjust the columns and turn it back into a chart. You just go to the database section and do the edits there. Need to adjust your Kanban? Even though you can do it through the options menu here, just follow the same process. Find the base table in the database section. And when you have many views of the same table, all tasks, my tasks, priority tasks, you don't have to figure which one of these is your base table. You know that all of them are views and your base table is located in the database part of the doc. Principle number 2. Each base table goes onto a separate page. I know some makers prefer to have all their tables on the same page collapsed, but it's actually not a good idea. In the beginning your tables will be small, but with the time they will grow and you won't be able to work with that page anymore. You'll have to scroll it up and down, find where the table starts, expand, collapse, and also it will lag as hell. We are doing all of this to save time after all. So it's just much more convenient to have every table on a separate page, named in the same way as the table, and when you need to go to it to make adjustments, you just click on the page that's conveniently placed in the navigation panel. And when your list of pages grows long, you are more than welcome to group them into folders by creating folder-like pages and dragging your base table pages into them, and have them grouped by purpose and expand and collapse the tree at will. This practice is actually inspired by how developers structure their code. They never write all of it in one file. Instead, they always break it down one module per file, and then they use folders to combine modules of the same purpose together. Divide and conquer, the ancient wisdom. There's also a Coda-specific reason to this. When you organize your base tables like that, your page tree basically becomes your doc map. Yes, there is a doc map in Coda, but A, it's cluttered with all sorts of things, objects, tables that you might be using as simple tables. B, you cannot really order it how you want, whereas with pages you can actually put them in the order that mentally works better for you. Like going from top to bottom, like from projects, tasks and subtasks. And C, your screen estate is precious and you don't want another panel just hanging around for no reason most of the time. Now, it's not a problem if you add something extra to these pages, like buttons or helper tables that are designed to do some maintenance on that exact table. But as a general rule, do not put multiple base tables on the same page. Oh, and I almost forgot. Sometimes you need to create views for technical purposes, like a view to set up a modal layout, or a specifically configured view for crossdock. You should put them on subpages under the page with their respective base tables. And as for various helper tables, I don't put them all in a separate folder, instead I'm placing them along with the other relevant pages. Okay, principle number 3 is name your base tables in a special way. Don't just call them all tasks, all projects. Leave those names for the user-facing views. Instead, use something more technical. Like, I prefer to prefix my tables with DB, the sync tables I import from elsewhere with in, helper tables with HLP. I also have prefixes for technical views. Besides, I also prefix control IDs and button IDs. This also helps you save your time when you are writing formulas. In most cases, you want to read from a table and not a view, and by typing out your prefix into the formula window, you already have your code suggestions filtered down to only the base tables. Trust me, once you start writing formulas, it saves a lot of time. Now, this naming is not definitive. Sometimes I use other prefixes when it makes sense. Also, I know that some experts are using a different naming schema. What's important here is that you don't mix up your base tables and views. Remember that object names are unique in Coda, so if you name your base table all tasks, you cannot name a view like that. And it's better to preserve human-readable and nice names for the human-facing part of the doc. Okay, principle number 4. For these database pages, use minimalistic and similar icons. Resist the urge to set the checklist icon on the DB tasks or a human icon on DB people. Leave these various icons for the user-facing part of your doc. There's a few reasons for that. The first is that these icons are nothing but visual clutter. In databases, they don't help but distract. The titles and grouping pages into folders already does the job. Instead, use this opportunity to communicate more about the type of the table. Like, I'm using this icon for tables with data, this icon for small tables that I use instead of select lists, I call them lookup tables, this icon for special tables, This icon for tables that I don't use anymore and want to delete. This icon is for export views that I'm going to use with CrossDock or Sync Tables Pro. Then this icon is for sync tables. And for helper tables, which are not about data but more about the logic, I use this blue cogs icon. And there are many more icons if you search for database or data. Feel free to use these, or you can always upload some custom icons. Again, this is heavily inspired by programming. If you look at any modern development environment, you will see that files with code have icons that don't communicate what the file is about, but what kind of module it is. Besides, if you are at referencing pages in your doc, this will help you pick the right one and not the one from the database. And last but not least, principle number 5, always keep your base table unsorted, ungrouped, unfiltered, and with all columns visible. Remember that we're trying to save time, specifically your time, when you get back to this doc weeks after you've built it to make adjustments. By that time, chances are you forgot a lot about what was special about that table, what kinds of columns you already had, or do the rows already appear in disordered order. And being able to estimate that at a glance is a massive time saver. This is best illustrated with an example. Take a look at this table of receipts. We need to write a formula to take the most recent receipt. Can we just take the last row and assume it's gonna be our latest? Or do we have to use a slow sorting formula? If this table were grouped or sorted, we wouldn't know unless we removed the sorting. Or we need to calculate the tax amount on each receipt. As we scroll to the end of the table, we can notice here it is. Now if that column was hidden, we wouldn't think twice before adding a duplicate. Trust me, I've seen a lot of client docs with duplicate columns just because one team member had added it in some view but didn't show it in the base table, and then another team member didn't see it there and added it once again. If you get into the habit of always keeping your base tables like that, you will be able to trust what you see, and you won't have to waste your time going and rechecking. Now, this gets in the way of how some Codas features work, unfortunately. For example, the fields you see in the pop-up for a row reference corresponds to the visible columns on the base table. And if we keep all columns visible, they all end up in a pop-up, which is often not what we want. But this doesn't mean that the principles are wrong. This means that we should push Coda to make that part adjustable, because making the pop-up adjustable makes much more sense than keeping it hardly linked to the base table settings. Now that we've covered the database part of the doc, the remaining question is, how do we structure the user-facing part of the doc? And the answer is, go wild, or actually do what makes the most sense for your workflow. What personally worked best for me was structuring my doc like an app and using pages like an app's screens. Like in the app I'm editing my videos in. There is a screen with all projects, then there is a screen with folders and projects in folders, a screen with templates, the settings screen, and ultimately the screen where I'm editing a project. I apply the same thinking to my Coda pages. In the docs that I make, each page serves one purpose. It's like one destination where a user can go and perform one task of their workflow without unnecessary switching to other pages. We'll talk more about this when I make series on everything about user experience. Finally, I'll give you some actionable tips how to quickly get your doc structured. For every table that you suspect is not in its place, you go to the doc map. You can do that by finding any view of that table and clicking on this link icon. And then in the doc map, you click on the base table that's there in the top. Open the 3 dots menu next to the table's title and click Create a View. Now rename the base table with the DB prefix. Grab it by the 3 dots and drag it to the New Page button. This will create a new page that has the name of the table. The view that has been created has the same columns and sorting and settings that the base table used to have, so all you have to do here is edit the title back to what it was. And now go to your created page, set an icon, and drag it into your database realm. Rinse and repeat for every base table. So let's recap. Put your base tables in a separate part of your doc, put each table on a separate page, use prefixes to tell base tables apart from views, use a uniform set of icons, and always keep base tables unsorted, unfiltered, with all columns visible. These principles aren't just universal for software development. They're actually already battle-tested for Coda. I posted them in the community as far as in 2019, and I outlined them in my old Best Practices series. The there is a link in the description, check out how far I've come. And over all this time I saw a lot of other makers and experts adopting them, and even Coda themselves teaching them in their doctorate program. Again, if you're building small and short-lived docks, it's probably not worth the trouble. But if you're serious about Coda and you're building your docks to last, I strongly encourage you to follow them. And no, you won't thank me, you will thank the past you. That said, you can also thank me by subscribing, giving this video a like, leaving a comment, and supporting me on Patreon, because without your support the next videos may not exist.